Hello everyone and welcome back to today's video. Today we are doing a plugin tutorial. I know, long time no see with these, on FateUHC. This is actually a product that BGHDDevelopment makes ourselves. A lot of you are our FiveM viewers and actually don't know we make Minecraft plugins, but we actually do. So this is one of our paid plugins. Typically it's $19.99 on either Spigot, MC Market, or Build by Bit now, or Polymart. So you can get it on any of these sites. It's on sale right now for Black Friday, but I wanted to make a video because I haven't made one in I think in 2.5 years on this, and there's been a billion updates to this thing. I think if I go back over here, we're about to be on update 200, so we've updated this obviously a lot over the years. So I kind of wanted to make an update on this. We've had over about 700 purchasers in that time, and people seem to really enjoy it. So let's go over what it supports, what you would need, and we'll go through the install process. I'll showcase some in-game features, and we'll wrap it up. So this video may be a little longer than normal, but I promise more content, including FiveM, is coming soon. So let's take a look at the plugin page to start off. So we have originally, this is a little outdated. We used to have 40 scenarios, but we now have 80, and there's a lot of stuff built in. So there's videos over here on the plugin page. This is obviously going to be replaced by the video I'm creating right now because I'm going to try to combine all of this together. You can look at the images and everything, but I'll show you in game in a little bit as well. And here's the list of scenarios. We can go through these a little bit more in detail in game, but I'll just scroll through slowly here and you can kind of look at them all. And then we have even more in this list here. So if you're interested in scenario suggestions, we do accept those. Just reach out to us on Discord and we'll probably throw it in if it's not here already. There's a lot of features. So we have leaderboard stats. Everything can be configured in game. We don't have a Discord bot anymore due to the API changes, but we do have Discord webhooks if you're interested in that. We have action bars. There's a practice system. There is a world generation system, which is I'll get into that later on. There is a Bungie announced add-on for it. There is a remote report and alert system. There's cosmetic particles built in, spectators, moderators, teams. You can use the same configuration of your game or the same scenarios every time, or load it on start. Very easy. Combat loggers, auto start, scoreboards, holograms, chat formatting, message customization, placeholder API, all that good stuff is in here. In terms of requirements, you need to have either a MySQL or a MongoDB database running to support this plugin. It does require that, and it also requires a full server. So this is not something you can throw on a server with a lobby and other game modes and stuff. This requires the full server, and I highly recommend running it as standalone as possible, other than like a permissions plugin or something, because it does use that full server. It's going to be modifying a lot of stuff in there. If you want to use holograms and stuff, we do support our API for decent holograms, so you just have to download it as it's free. We also support Ore Plus for modifying how many ores are generated in the world. And then finally, we also support terrain control. If you want any customization over how the world is generated outside of default Minecraft generation, you can throw this into your server and create a very advanced configuration for it. I'm not going to go over this because it's really not something that I'm an expert on, but there's a lot of people out there who can go ahead and explain how terrain control works. There's a lot of configure files over on the internet as well. We've recently started supporting 1.8 through 1.20. We used to support 1.7 and 1.8 only. We slowly advanced that to then be 1.9 through 1.12. And now we officially support 1.8 through 1.20.2 or whatever the latest version is. And we're planning to continue hosting all new versions as long as the systems that we use for World Border and stuff continues to advance. In terms of configure files and permissions, we're going to go ahead and take a look over on our wiki page. We also do have a very basic API if you're interested in going over that. I'm planning to recode this very soon, so just keep an eye out over on the page. So let's take a look at our wiki page. It has links to everything. You have a database set up, so it goes over the config file. It shows you can enable MongoDB if you want. If you're using MongoDB, most likely you're going to be using a URI or connection string, so you would just throw that in here. You can ignore the rest of this here. And then MySQL obviously is down here. You can enable this. Most people would use MySQL. For those who have used MongoDB and then wanted to migrate to MySQL, because we recently added MySQL support, you can do that by following these instructions. Pretty much you enable both, and it would automatically transfer and then you would stop the server, and then it would go ahead and disable that from your config file, which is pretty cool. Commands and permissions, there is a very long list in here. I'm not going to go over all of them, but you can go ahead and go through here, look at everything you're looking for, and add these to your players as needed. Obviously, there is a lot, and I try to update this as frequently as possible. Some stuff may be missing, but I'm going to try to go through it again very soon. The API, of course, is here. You can get the API guidelines or Java docs and the downloads over on our GitHub page as well. Bungie Announce is still technically working. It says up here it's not technically working. It does work. We're just trying to recode a couple parts of it to make it a little easier. But it goes over a very basic setup on how to set it up for that. For placeholders, we have a lot of them. These are all supported in Placeholder API, so you can use this for any of your plugins or chat formatting or any of that. And then we also have scenarios and config options. So if you wanted to make your own GUI system using placeholders, like to show what's enabled or stuff, if you don't want to use our default one, you can do that with these placeholders. We also do the same with leaderboards, where you can just create a leaderboard and showcase a position of your choice under a leaderboard of your choice. And here's the leaderboard list here. You can do pretty much any of those as well. Same with self placeholders. We have a lot of those for your stats. So if you, for some reason, have a player you want to have self placeholders, you can do that, or you can set up custom player name in those as well, which is pretty cool. And then config file placeholders, there's a lot of them. Scoreboard placeholders, there's a lot of them. The scoreboard also fully supports placeholder API. And if you're on new versions, it sort of supports hex colors. We'll go into that real quick. Here's the hex color system. It's not your traditional system. You got to use this cool little format here to use it. A lot of people figure it out. I personally don't get the whole appeal around hex colors. I think they're cool, but overall, it's, you know, I'm not that interested in them. For action bars, this hasn't been updated in a while, but pretty much what's going to happen is you can enable them in the action or the US. I think it's actionbar.yml. We'll go ahead and go. I'm going to update you on this soon. But pretty much what you have to do is you just enable it. You enable the ones you want, and then they will work in game now natively. You don't need to install anything else. It's pretty cool. There is support for Build UHC practice. We have a default kit for you on 1.8 where you can just paste this in to replace the practice.yml and enable the block removal time. So you can place blocks in practice and they automatically get removed. A lot of people like this. I tend to as well. So it's there for your enjoyment. We do support death message chat colors. This is something I am planning to recode very soon. We have a system. The way our death messages work is we hook into the Spigot death messages. So we're not actually sending a message custom. We're sending the ones based on Spigot. So we take their text and we just add the kill numbers to it. This is something that I want to change. I just haven't gotten around to it because it's kind of tied into other systems in the code. So I will get to this eventually. We do have an option for mob spawn rates. By default, it is 3. So it defaults and expands all animals up by 3. So if you spawn 1, you're actually going to get 3. You can set this to 0 by default to disable our system and have it as a default 1, whatever you want to do. We do have a support for a custom world's no generation option. This means that you will use the same world over and over again. This is a little bit of a detailed setup that I'm not going to go into, but the wiki kind of explains how you can do it. You create a backup folder in your FateUHC plugins folder and put your world file in there. And then every time the server restarts, it's going to download and replace your existing UHC world with that one, and it will be ready to play. This is useful for servers who really know what they're doing and don't want to use different maps, and it's always the same map. But otherwise, the game will generate a map every single time. And then we have the scenario and config list. This is pretty much just all the descriptions of everything you can go on this page to see. And then which of the config options and the values and what they are, true and false, or if they're a value of an integer, etc. And then all of our files are here. You got your UHC configuration file, which is your main one in the plugin. We're going to go through these in detail in a moment. You got items.yml. This is where you have like join items and you can customize the text on them and everything. You got your leaderboards.yml. This is where all your holograms are. This will also be recoded at some point, but for now, they are all set up in here, but you do set the location in game. It's just a text set up in here. The discord.yml is where you can set your starting webhooks and winner webhooks and everything. Data.yml is obviously going to be your MySQL or MongoDB, this page will be updated as well. I see it's out of date. Language.yml is where all of your messages in the plugin come from. 90% of them are in here. It's a very long file, so if you're looking to change the language or anything, you should be able to do that with every message in the plugin in theory. We also have the scoreboard layout, so you can have different scoreboards during each aspect of your game, and you can configure this to your liking. Again, you can use any placeholders from the previous ones. And then down here at the bottom, you have the variables that are taken for some different aspects, like action bars or holograms, etc. can be grabbed from down here. GUI items.yml is every item in a GUI that we support changing. Right now, it's not all of them, and this system I really want to get rid of and recode, but it's so coded into the plugin that I don't think it's a good idea to recode at this time. Config management.yml is where your automatic larger game configs will be saved. We have one by default here, so it shows you what scenarios you have, what the settings are, the game type, when it was saved, who it was saved by, and if it would load on enable. I highly recommend you don't touch this yourself. It should just be set up in game, and I'll show you how to do that. UHC command.yml is just another message. This is eventually going to be changed as well. This was done by request. Same with party command.yml is just for easy access to change up the languages. Cosmetics.yml is where your explosions and cosmetics are. I don't know why we added this in the first place. It's kind of been there since the original, but pretty much what it does is you have permissions that you can give the players. The point system is given on wins if you decide to enable it. To disable it, just set it to 0 for each one of these, and you can go based off your permission. And then the effect is just taken from your Spigot effect list. So, for example, a happy villager, I believe, would just be like emeralds that fly through the air when you use a rod or something. This is pretty much just your typical type of cosmetics. And you can add more by copying and pasting all of this down, and it adds a new cosmetic to the menu. The practice.yml again is just for the block removal and kit. I recommend setting the kit in game, not using it or modifying this unless you really know what you're going to do, because this is your whole inventory. The toggles.yml is just a couple of the commands that we added to be able to be toggled. Randomizer.yml is also a file that is just going to be updated itself. You don't have to touch it. It's for the randomizer scenario. So if it's enabled, for example, cobblestone would drop nether brick, and this would change every time the server restarts, so you don't have to do anything with this yourself. And then the action bar.yml, like I was saying earlier, is where you enable or disable and set some of the other formatting. So it is pretty cool. This action bars do support 1.8 through 1.20 now, which is awesome as well. I really have to update this wiki. Anyway, to download the plugin and get started, all you have to do is go to one of the pages where you bought this, either for Spigot, Build by Bit, or Polymart, and just go ahead and press the download button. It will go ahead and download, and then you're going to go to wherever your server is. For my example today, I'm just going to use the latest build of Paper Spigot. I highly recommend Paper Spigot over all of the alternatives. It's a lot easier. And to showcase holograms and stuff, and I'm going to go ahead and download decent holograms, throw it in the server with FateUHC. I'm not going to download Train Control or Plus for this video. I don't think it's needed. All right, now that we have it inside of our server, to start it up, we're just going to go ahead and press the start.bat. And you can see a lot of stuff is going to happen all kind of at once. We're going to get a lot of config files, and we may get a couple errors inside of the console as well. And that is fine because we have a lot of stuff loading. So at first, the first time it downloads, you're going to see it's going to be enabling, and it will download a bunch of information and libraries. This is just to make the plugin work. And it's going to say it's going, if you're using a new version, it's using an experimental plugin channel, and it's in beta support because it's still obviously new to these newer versions. And then you have any info on the events that are loading. So you can see 1.9 and then 1.13 events have been enabled. And then it says you need to enable MongoDB or MySQL in order to use the plugin. So we'll go ahead and stop the server just like that and go into our FateUHC folder. And you can see all the files have generated. You have a libs folder. You can ignore this. This is just the libraries that is downloaded to allow the plugin to work. And then in here, you can see you have all of your files. And the one we're going to focus on is the data.yml. In this example, I'm just going to set MySQL enabled and put my details here. Since I'm running a local server, mine is literally localhost with FateUHC as all of my info. you are obviously going to have your own details. This is not what your details are going to be. If you've never run a database before, a lot of hosts provide MySQL for free, and you can get a MongoDB from MySQL Atlas for free if you're interested in that. I personally like MySQL more, so I'm going to be using that. And then when we go ahead and start our server, now that MySQL is set to enabled and our details are here, a lot more is going to happen in this console. We're going to see the world start to generate, and what that means is you may see a couple errors pop up in console. That is normal. So let's go ahead and see this. It says world deleted, world unloaded, world creating, and now it's going to start going through the creation of all the different worlds. FateUHC generates a lot of worlds. And if you go into, I'm in the wrong folder here. If you go into your, if I can find it, YT FateUHC install, there we go. Inside of your folder here, you have your UHC lobby, your UHC practice, your UHC world, and your UHC world nether, in addition to your default world files that the Spigot creates. The reason for this is because the lobby file is where you're going to replace this with whatever your custom lobby is. If you don't want a custom lobby, well, you can just build one in this world, I guess, but I highly recommend doing it outside of the server, building it, throwing it in, and replacing your world with UHC lobby. The UHC practice world is the same thing. Build it outside of the server and then replace ours. Just keep the name UHC practice when you replace it. And then these two, the UHC world and the UHC world nether, is what this is generating in the console now. So in our console, this is something that a lot of people don't understand how it works, but it's going to generate all the chunks in the world based on the size of the world that's set in the UHC configuration file. This can take up to an hour, depending on your server specs and version. Typically, it takes about 15 minutes for me to complete. On the longer term, I've seen it take about an hour. I also recommend the server has at least 5 gigabytes of RAM on it, but I highly recommend 8 or more just because of the amount of info that this takes. So obviously, it will go ahead and generate, and I'm going to let it generate. When it's done generating, it will automatically restart the server. And this is important because if it doesn't automatically restart the server, nothing's going to work in the game because it disables specific features like leaderboards and holograms until the server restarts when it's loaded. So pretty much the way it works is it will generate the world, it will restart, the game can then be played. At the game's ending, it will restart, and the process will repeat with the world generating again and restarting when it's ready. So you can technically, and people have had this set up to where everything's automatic. It will just automatically update, use an auto start through the player count, and go from there. So while this go ahead and loads in the background, let's take a look at some of the FateUHC configuration files in the UHC configuration.yml. At the top, you see, should you use player balancer? I don't have that set to false. You can just keep that false. And then you can also use a fallback server as well if you're interested in that. Join items. Could you have join items? Is there an auto whitelist? If you have an auto whitelist, there is a list of players down in this file somewhere. I'm eventually going to remake this so it's a little easier to see, but you can go ahead and set that up. Practice respawn radius is 7. Reboot time can be whatever you want. By default, it's 30. I would recommend leaving that as that. I would also never touch this world thing unless you know what you're doing. Just keep it easy. UHC world true will automatically, so what this does is every time that you play the game, this is going to be set to true when the server restarts. This prompts the generation, and then this will automatically restart and set to false when the generation is done. That's how the server knows if it's ready or not. Random scatter, if you're interested in that, anything below the border that you set here will automatically TP and scatter the players. This can cause some lag. Mass TPs do cause lag, and you just have to be ready for that. And then you also have a teleport teams together on random shrink. So if you do enable this, do you want teams to still teleport together? Lobby locations and practice locations, again, set this in game. You don't have to mess with it in the file unless you know what you're doing. Should you hide lobby players? And if you do, what's the permission to show them? Should you fix a visual bug? And this is something where it will kind of block out the hide lobby players. This is something that is added as a debug only. It should always be set to false unless we tell you to in a support ticket to enable it. Should you remove the default join messages, and should you replace them, and what should you replace them as? Lots of messages in here. You can configure it to. Chat format. What is your chat format? We support placeholder API in here. You can disable our integration as well. So if you have your own chat format, you can use that as well. What are the chat prefixes for the different roles? So you have host, mod, and then if you're in a party, what should that be? If you're using the Bungie announce, you just enable it here. We also have a vote system where you can enable it to allow players to vote for scenarios or vote for configurations inside of the game. And then you have how many scenarios should be enabled, and then your votable scenarios. So if you wanted all your scenarios to be votable, take the list from the wiki and just paste them in here. This is the next part where it gets a little bit more complicated. This is where your border is. So by default, your border is going to start at a size 2000, and it will shrink to a size of 25 every 5 minutes. The color ID is the color of the glass that spawns above the bedrock border. So the border is only bedrock up to about 5 tall, and then it becomes a invisible glass to just kind of make it lag less and all of that. Shrink stream here is where you're going to reduce it. So if you only want the world to generate to, let's say, 3000, you would get rid of the rest of this, and then it's going to reduce that time of generation to 3000, have a maximum by 3000 by 3000, and your shrink is still going to start at 2000. So your world's going to allow up to this at first, and then it will first shrink to 2000 and go down from there. So you technically don't need this 2500 in the middle, but that's up to you. Then you have your world generator. Keep this as terrain control regardless of what you're doing. If you have it in the server, it will work. If not, it won't. Very easy. Mob stacker is going to be removed pretty soon. It only works in 1.8. I don't recommend using it outside of that. Mob rate multiplier, again, we talked about that over on the wiki page. You can go ahead and use this to double or triple how much you do. If you use some flower power, which is one of the scenarios, you can add blocked blocks here, or materials that you want to be dropped. So a note, in 1.8, the config files are designed for that. We've tried to make it as easy as possible for newer versions to have just cross compatibility, but sometimes with stuff like this, these items are going to be 1.8, not 1.14 or 1.15 or 1.20, whatever. So you may need to add your newer version items into here. You got your world window messages here, your border filling messages, and your rule message. So this will send at the beginning of this game. You also have the ability to set a sound here. If you want the point system to work, you can go ahead and set this to something that you want, but I would keep it as 0 if you want to disable it. Pre-whitelisted players, again, this will only work if that pre-whitelist setting at the top of the file is enabled. And here comes the auto start. So this is something I want to focus a little bit more on because a lot of people like using this. So you can do two things. You can do auto start through here. If you enable it in this file, you set your required players and then the timer in minute. Once it hits that required players, it will count down in that timer, and then it will go ahead and set that up. Auto whitelist, you can set it as on and off, and at what point do you want it to enable the auto whitelist as well in seconds, which is pretty cool. And then it also has the messages for the game is starting, etc. This is data sync here is legacy only. Don't worry about that unless you happen to have one of our expired older things. You have the message of the day. You can enable it and disable it. You also have the option to automatically announce your Bungie server info if you're using our add-on through the depend site. So for 30 seconds, 30 minutes, 20 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute before the game starts, which is pretty cool. You also have all the sounds in the plugin and how much experience you want per block dropped. And then you also have the ability to toggle sounds on and off. Users can toggle this in game with Slack settings, but in theory, you want to keep this to true all the time. Then you have the option to set the config. So if you do /config in game for the player, should it show in chat? If it does, this is what shows. If not, it will open in a GUI. Same thing with scenarios. You can configure that there as well. As we move further down here, you can see that we do have the option here if you want to enable a Bungie announce command by manual, which is just broadcast space the message, which uses that Bungie add-on as well. Help op, thank, and report cooldowns can be set here as well, along with if you want practice broadcasts on or off. This is pretty much the rest of it here is just toggles. Should names be colored in tab if you're using a supported version? Should tab health show there? What should your death messages be? Should they be enabled? What color should they be? And then if you want any configuration on this, the type of spelling for hours or translations or whatever you want to call it there. Again, for the build UHC kit, don't set this from here unless you know what you're doing. Do it from in-game. And then the rest of this is pretty simple because they all have explanations here. Should you spawn ahead on death? Do you want to use that world backup system? For us, we don't. Do you want to use the default buckets shutdown, or should we use just the restart method? If you're using the superheroes scenario, what should be the potions that are supported? Is there a fallback server? Do you want that to be used for whatever you want? So when the server closes, do you want to send players to that server? What scenarios should be enabled on a 100 border scenario setting? Blocked interaction blocks. You don't want players to use levers or iron doors. You can set that up here. Should mobs be spawned while pre-genning the world? Any commands that you want to run on kill or on win? Your server name. And this is the newest setting, is the new scoreboard API. I recommend keeping this false. It will only work on 1.13, and it's not really worth the trouble of setting up right now. So that is that file. I don't think there's any other file I really want to go over. This config.yml, it's a bit confusing. This is for world border. Keep this exactly the same unless you know exactly what you are doing. It is not worth changing. It's automatically generated by the system that is generating the chunks in the background here. We'll go over the discord.yml real quick. Pretty much it's easy to enable. You just enable it at the top, paste in a Discord webhook for the winner or the start. You can set the tag you want. You can use either this type of format, or you can do the format with the role ID, which is the easier way of doing it in my opinion. And you can configure what these are. And then these placeholders are taken over from that placeholder page on the wiki. So if you want to change the translations or anything there, you can go ahead and do so. All right, we are almost at the completion of the world generation, and I think it's been about 10 minutes or so, so we're getting close there. So we'll go ahead and take a look at a couple more files while we wait for this. Oh, there we go. Never mind. We don't have to. It's just gone ahead and finished. So you can see it's world builder fill finished. UHC chunks are now loaded. Restarting the server in 5 seconds. It's going to go ahead and restart. I don't have a restart script in my folder. So what it does is just going to go ahead and ask me if I want to restart. I'm going to go ahead and press yes to go ahead and enable that. And I'm going to start up my Minecraft client in the background so I can go ahead and jump into the game here. So there we go. It's now going to start up. If you get any errors, some people get errors in the world. Just keep an eye on them. As long as they are not going to crash the server, you don't really have to worry about it. And you can see now that we're in console, it's going to load the leaderboards since the world is created and ready. So all of that is set up as well. So if we go ahead and launch Minecraft with our latest release, and I don't know if this is my account. I don't think it is. Let's switch over to my main account. I have a lot of alts. We're going to join an alt to showcase some of the features, but I'm going to switch back to my main Microsoft account. So I'm opt on the server, and we'll go ahead and launch the latest release. We do have support through Discord. If you're interested in purchasing the plugin or need help or whatever else, you can come over to our Discord server. The link's in the description. First, to verify you own the plugin, just click this verification under general support. It will ask you for an email, and one of our staff members will give you a role called customer. There's a lot of them in here, so you can go ahead and enable that. And then under plugin support after that, you just click Fate Suite, and it will open a ticket, ask you for your version, what plugin you're using, and all of that good stuff. And we'll get back to you as soon as possible for any support in that. All right, let's go ahead and hop in games. You can see our message of the day examples here that you can configure in that UHC configuration file. And when we get in game, obviously we haven't set a lobby or anything, so we're just going to go ahead and spawn underground. So I'm going to go ahead and set myself to creative mode and build up into the top of the world. And we'll go ahead and start by setting up the lobby. So to set a lobby, it's pretty easy. You can go ahead and set at a specific point. In this point, I'm just going to make it the grass here, and do UHC space set lobby. It's that easy. So now when you disconnect and rejoin to the server, you're going to spawn on that lobby location, which is very easy. By default, you have a couple things in your inventory. You have the practice arena sword, but it's not enabled yet. I'll show you how to enable it. You have the configuration book, which is going to open the /UHC config admin button. In here, you can save and load the configs. By default, you aren't going to see this unless you are an admin. You will see this if you are a normal player. That just shows you what's currently enabled, what the rates of the configuration is, and all of that good stuff. You have the option to create a party if the game is in party mode. Otherwise, you don't. You have your stats menu that opens up, so you can see any stats you had in the past. I'm using a database where I have stats, so that's going to show up. And it will also let you view the leaderboards, and those show the top 10 by default. You also have the ores leaderboard, which is just how many ores of the item you mined. These do support the new deep slate ores as well. They will show up under the original ore type. And you also have the leaderboards just open from your inventory there. Pretty easy. So let's go ahead and take a look a little bit on our config admin menu. So if you type config admin, it's going to open up this menu. You have a few things. You have the save and load configs. This is where that example was. You can see Rush UHC is the default one we have in here. It's just a basic thing. There's nothing, no scenarios, no game modes, nothing enabled, and it's not enabled to load on default. So if you wanted to set up a scenario, for example, we can change the configuration. Let's say you want nether bed explosions to be enabled. You can click that. Let's say you want speed potions to be enabled. You can click that. And let's say you want the first shrink to not be 35 minutes into the game. You want the first shrink to be 15 minutes into the game. You'd enter this into chat, press enter, and it's now set to 15. If you go into config admin again, you can also edit the scenarios, alerts menu, toggle practice, Discord menu, and exp. So in the toggle practice, you can click this and you can see practice is now enabled. In alerts menu, you can see you can enable your mining alerts, PvP alerts, IPvP alerts, report alerts, and help op alerts. You can also do this just from typing /alerts. So if you're a staff member, it keeps it easy. You also have Slack settings, which allows you to toggle XP on and off and your scoreboard on and off as well. Those can be configured on a player basis, so you don't toggle that for the whole server. In config admin, you also have the Discord menu. You can send a manual start message or a winner message if you have that webhook set up in the configuration file. And then finally, you have your server information down here. It just shows you your version and your plugin version. The reason we have this in here is just for debug for users. If you run into any problems, you can let us know. Anyway, back in here, you can either get to your scenarios by typing /scenario admin, and that would open up the scenario menu where you can toggle them on and off. You can also toggle them on and off automatically if you have the permission by just typing them in chat. They will autofill as well, which is pretty cool, but I like using /scenario admin. You can also get it from this menu in here. And in here, you have every single scenario on the plugin. Right now, it's almost 2 full pages of them, so you can toggle whatever you want. For our example here, we're going to enable cut clean and we're going to enable triple ores. So we want ores to automatically be mined, and we also want them to go ahead and be tripled every time we mine 1 ore. So you can see those have been enabled. Tab health is enabled. On newer versions, we have a problem with the colors in tab, but the health will work across versions right now. We're working on that color issue as I record this video. So more info on that coming soon, but the tab health is working up there regardless on what version you're on. When you're in lobby, now that we've enabled practice, you can obviously right click your sword, and we haven't set a custom world or anything, and we also haven't set a kit. So we've gone ahead and spawned in here in a normal world. Now to set a kit, it's pretty easy. You're just going to go into game mode creative, and then you're going to go ahead and set what you want, put on what you want. So if you want like a weird like organization here, you want a totem, I don't know, you can give them a sword, two double sword. You put on whatever you want. And for some reason that didn't let me put on the armor when it should have. Okay, I'm gonna have to fix that, but in theory you would put on all of your armor and everything, and then you would do /practice set kit, and now it will say you successfully updated the practice arena kit. To get all of the info for practice, you can type /practice help. It will tell you can do /practice join, leave, on, off, set location for the spawn. So we can do /practice set location. And now it's going to spawn you in a 7 radius around this location, so you can't spawn kill people. You can change that radius over in the config file for the practice.yml. You can also set the max amount of players you want in practice. You also have that custom scoreboard that shows up here when you are using a practice, and then that will toggle back when you do /practice to leave practice to the lobby scoreboard. And now when we rejoin practice, we're going to have those items in our configured inventory, which is pretty cool. There we go. So that is set up. Now let's talk about setting a host. You can set a host by using /set host, the name of the player. By default, this really doesn't do anything but put you into the staff mode, make you invisible, and give you a couple items. In here, you have the Alive's player menu. You have the automatic configuration menu. You have a random player teleport. You have UHC locations. This will let you teleport to the different worlds as needed. Disable vanish to enable and disable it. Freeze a player. You can also teleport to 0, 0. And you can also look at a player's inventory. We don't have another player in here yet, but we will soon. And you have the ability in settings to toggle night vision or invisibility if you want to be visible, but just under a potion effect, which is pretty cool. So in order to test some of this out, I'm going to go ahead and launch a second Minecraft client in an alt, and we'll get them in here to see what it looks like for a user compared to a staff member when they are looked at in an inventory or when you go into a world. So while that goes ahead and loads, we'll go ahead and teleport to the UHC world by just clicking that in here. And now you are inside the UHC_ world. This is the world that all players are going to be teleported and scattered to around that random 3,000 or 5,000 block radius, whatever you set up in the config file. So when you're ready, you can go ahead and start the game with select UHC start game, and you can obviously teleport back to the lobby and stuff as needed. All right, here's our second account. So we'll go ahead and join this account in, and obviously they're going to spawn at the same place the last one did. And I don't know if the player inventory is going to work in here. It's not going to work in here. We got to actually get in game. So I'm going to go ahead and unset host. So remove host myself because I'm also going to be a player in this game. When you remove the host, pretty much what it does is it will remove you flying and you're invisible and put you back into a player status in the game. And I'm going to get one more alt account in here to just stay as the host for when we start the game. So we'll go ahead and do that real quick and I'll be right back. All right, so I now have 3 accounts in the game. And that is fine because it makes sense. We have cut, clean, and triple ores enabled. And then I can do config admin and save this as a default game as well. So you just go in and create a save file there. I want it to load every time the server is enabled. It's very cool. And you can load this obviously when you want to activate it, and it will just load all those saved settings that you've just configured. Pretty cool. All right, to start the game, you can do just UHC start. And we do recommend you disable practice prior to starting. So you can just do practice off. And now you're going to be able to start the game. The reason we do this warning is because auto start sometimes can teleport players from both the practice to the lobby world and then to the UHC world. That doubles the lag you're going to experience. Everyone will experience lag on the first start of the game. It is to be expected with all the teleporting taking place. So to keep this easy, I'm going to go ahead and put 3 client menus up here on the screen at once. It's going to be a little disorganized, but that is okay. And I'm going to type the start command inside of my host setting here, UHC start. It's going to say scattering players, how many players have currently been scattered and how many are being scattered. So there you go, 1, 2. Now we have scattered the players. We have spawned in different locations. And obviously the host isn't going to be scattered. So I'm just going to go ahead and teleport to the UHC world. And I'm now in the UHC world where I left off. So you can see the game is starting. We're going to get that all the scoreboards change and everybody can now start playing. Pretty cool. If you wanted to TP to a random player or a live players, you just open this menu and you can click to teleport to them. You can also teleport to a random player every time, which is pretty cool as well. And we'll just go through that list and try to find a random player. See to spawn near wolves. Very cool indeed. Obviously, I'm invisible to these players. They can't see me. I'm not opt, so you can see they're not going to be able to see me here. I'm invisible, invincible, all that good stuff as well. But I'm going to go ahead and give them items, and you can drop items if you have a permission. By default, hosts don't have this permission. You're going to have to give them the permission as well. And I'm just going to give them a stack of diamonds so I can showcase that the scenario is working. So if I go ahead and place down these diamonds and then go ahead and mine, I'm going to go ahead and get 3 diamonds rather than 1. And then since we have that diamond alert on, you can see that I show that I found 6 diamonds at this location. And that's the total they've had so far, which is pretty cool. So that is set up there if you want to do something. And we now know our scenarios are working. To force a border, if you don't have, obviously you can see the game time. Final heals in 8 minutes, grace period is then. But if you want to force a border and it will shrink to 2014 minutes, you can do /border and the size right now. And I'm going to make the border 1,000 blocks. So you can see it is now shrinking in 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And if you are not inside that border, you're going to be teleported. And the reason you're going to be teleported is because you are outside of the border. It may lag if your world isn't fully loaded or if you have a billion players, but eventually you will spawn in here, and typically you will spawn pretty close to where that border is originally, and there is that glass border. So you can see the glass border did spawn in, and it's going to keep you from getting outside of that space if you are not a player who can get out there, which is pretty cool. The glass does not spawn anywhere else. It just spawns as you move or when your player is near it. The reason we do this is to prevent lag. So if you have any problems with that, you can go ahead and let us know in Discord. But then obviously the game is going to continue as well as you go from there, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to get all my players kind of away from the border, get the world loading a little bit more. You can see it is lagging quite a bit right now. And this is most likely just due to how many clients I'm running and how much RAM my computer has. The more resources you have, the less lag you're obviously going to have on your server. I've had players play this with 200 players and say they have no lag, and I've had servers say they have 20 players and they do have lag, but it turns out to be a hardware issue or something with their server software. So you just got to keep an eye on that and see if you have any problems. You can let us know over on Discord. To force the grace period off, you can do UHC set PvP, and that will go ahead and activate PvP. Same thing to disable it in case you need an extra grace period or something like that. Let's say a player dies, you can respawn them by doing /respawn the player name and a reason, so for test. But if they obviously haven't died, they're not going to have a respawn data. If a player joins late and you have that enabled through /config-admin, you can do /late scatter and the player name, or you can also do /rescatter the player name, and they will go ahead and be rescattered or late scattered depending on what needs to happen. Obviously, we are just going to go ahead and rush through this, so I'm going to go ahead and set the border to the last one, which is 25, and activate PvP. Give the server a minute to load, and we're going to go ahead and talk about one more thing in the config file I forgot to mention earlier as that loads in. When we go into the FateUHC folder, if you go to action bars, you can enable this manually for each one, or you can enable them for all of them. I recommend keeping them enabled for all, but do note if you do force the PvP, you may have a little bit of a glitch on the action bar just because it's trying to load multiple at once. All right, now that we are in game, you can see the deathmatch valley has been created. So in the config admin, you have the option of setting a flat deathmatch, and you can configure that obviously to your needs under the configuration setting here. But by default, it's 25 by 25. You can see the base of the bedrock border here, and the glass will go ahead and fill in as you go up. And then obviously if you want to kill players or whatever, you can do that as well, along with freezing them as well, which is pretty cool. Anyway, let's go ahead and kill one of our players. I'll make this player kill the other one, and you can go ahead and see the win message and everything. So here we go. I'm gonna go ahead and hit them. There we go. I've been slain and I have won the game. Very cool. You then have a 30-second reboot timer and all of that good stuff. You got fireworks, and then since we had that head there, you can see there's a golden head sitting there. Pretty cool. And then I'm gonna just show you a bit of the respawn setting before the server restarts, even though it won't stop the restart since that was the last player alive. We'll do /respawn noodle0711 test, and then obviously that was the wrong player. It was actually BGHDDevelopment, but the server's now going to restart again. When you restart the server, it's going to go ahead and load it inside of your files here and then regenerate the world again. So you can see once it does this, let it load, and then you could see that the world has been deleted, and it's now going to regenerate the whole world, and everything restarts just how you are. So there you go, a very long tutorial and a very long video today, but hopefully this covered enough about the plugin where it kind of makes sense for you to play. If you want to test it, you can also come on our Discord server and request a test, and we'll be happy to get you in game to try it out. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, everybody. Hopefully you did enjoy, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.
So you need a little break, huh? Boy, say you need a little space, yeah. Boy, is it 'cause you can't be faithful? Boy, hope she's cool. I'm like